Hey guys, welcome back to Guys at Magic. It's me, it's Steven. And I'm going to be hosting this beautiful Precon upgrade. Hunter, say what's up, man.
What's going on, everybody?
Super excited for this Outlaws of Thunder Junction Precon upgrade to the Grand Larceny deck, Hunter. How are you feeling about it?
Feeling pretty good. We're gonna be using Gonti in this one, but yeah, I'm really good.
Yeah, before we get into the Face Commander, just so everyone knows, over on Patreon, we are going to be doing a $100 and $300 upgrade just to the secondary commander. Kind of excited for that.
Felix 5 boots. That's right. Secondary upgrade over on our Patreon.
Yep, more than 2 boots.
It's got 5 of them.
But Hunter, I don't want to keep the people waiting. I kind of want to go into this deck. I kind of saw a little preview on our Mox field, and it looks terrifying. So talk to me about Gonti.
Yeah, so our deck is helmeted by Gonti, Canny, Acquisitor. It's 2 a black, a green, and a blue for a 5/5 legendary creature, Aetherborn Rogue. It says spells you cast but don't own cost 1 less to cast. And whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, look at the top card of that player's library, then exile it face down. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana spent of any type can be spent to cast that spell. So basically, we got the Thief among Thieves. Gonti is going to be stealing all of our opponent's spells and potentially creatures. There's a couple other things in this deck. We're just a big thief, okay? So, steal our opponent's things, play our opponent's things, win with our opponent's things. That's kind of the name of the game.
And you're not going to choose my stuff, right?
Depends if your stuff's good.
Well, I did. I don't put bad things in my deck, so I guess I might be targeted here.
Well, and also I just want to say Gonti is one of the coolest artworks in all of the set. It's fantastic.
I mean, to be honest with you, you put a cowboy hat on anybody, I think it's going to be a good time, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Well, Hunter, let's dive straight into your cards here. So let's go straight into the creatures. I see we are jumping right into a cowboy hat. I'm really excited.
Yeah, cowboy hat. I'm going with some new cards. So the fun thing about our commander is like he likes to steal stuff. So I looked throughout the entire new set and I was like, what else can I see that can steal stuff? And really, it just came down to one card. And it's kind of disappointing, to be honest. But the main card that was really good in this deck is Tiny Bones, the Pickpocket. It's 1 black mana for a 1/1 legendary creature skeleton rogue. It's got Death Touch and says, whenever you deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target non-land permanent card from that player's graveyard, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. So, get in with a little 1/1 Death Toucher. Probably people aren't going to block this, and then we can go ahead and make Gonti say, oh, your stuff costs 1 less, and we'll play their stuff. So, easy include.
Yeah, I'm not blocking this. I hate death touch creatures with a fiery passion.
Yeah, just a little bit, right?
I see we're losing the cowboy hats. I'm still excited though. What other creatures did we add?
Yeah, so that, like I said, was the only kind of new card from the new set I wanted to add, but we got some other cool ones. This kind of next section is all about getting in for that damage and triggering our opponent, so all of these are pretty much unblockable. This first one, Dothy Voidwalker. It's 2 black mana for a 3/2 creature Dothy Rogue. It has Shadow, which means this creature can't block or be blocked by only creatures with Shadow. It also says, if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, instead exile it with a void counter on it. You can also tap this, sacrifice Dothy Voidwalker, choose an exiled card an opponent controls with a void counter on it, and you may play that card this turn without paying its mana cost. So once again, Dothy can keep swinging and triggering our opponent, and if those things are going to the graveyard from an opponent, guess what? We can sacrifice Dothy Voidwalker later and play our opponent's stuff. Fits in with the theme.
Yeah, I'm kind of mad right now.
Let's see if you like this next one. This is from good old Lord of the Rings. This is Grima, Saruman's Footman. It's 2 a blue and a black for a 1/4 legendary creature human advisor. It says it can't be blocked, which means it can go in for our commander. It also says when it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then that player puts the exiled cards that weren't cast this way onto the bottom of their library in a random order. So, this goes ahead and hits twice, essentially, if our commander's in the field. Go ahead and get some stuff.
Yeah, and as you know, the guy that's playing the Spellslinger deck, I feel like I know where this one's going.
You're telling me you got some good instants and sorceries, do you?
No, I only put bad cards in my deck.
This other card that can't be blocked is Suspicious Stowaway. It's 1 on a blue for a 1/1 creature human rogue werewolf. It's got Suspicious Stowaway can't block. And it also says when it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card. But it's got Daybound. So if it does turn into the night, he does flip and transform into Seafaring Werewolf, which is a 2/1 that also says it can't be blocked. And when it deals combat damage to a player, I just draw the card. So always going to get in because it can't be blocked.
Hey, I'm just happy you're not stealing my stuff here.
Yeah, right? Maybe I will with Gonti on the field.
All right, so we talked about new cards that steal. We talked about some unblockable stuff. What else you got?
Yeah, so I just kind of, the other creatures I put in here kind of help out with our theme, kind of help with other stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about them. So this first one is Xanathar Guild Kingpin. It's for a blue and a black for a 5/6 legendary creature Beholder. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. Until end of turn, that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of their library anytime. You may play the top card of their library, and you may spend mana as though it were any mana of any color to cast spells this way. Pretty cool.
For you?
Stealing stuff, doing what my commander wants to do.
Yeah, I'm not happy.
Yeah, I am. And by the way, this deck is all about being a thief, so what better card to include than a Notion Thief? It's 2, a blue and a black for a 3/1 creature human rogue. It's got flash, and it says if an opponent would draw a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead, that player skips that draw and you draw a card. So, Notion Thief is a fantastic card. If you see someone that's like, I'm going to play a card to draw me a card, you flash this in and say, no, you won't. I will. Thank you.
Really building a hate bear deck, aren't you?
I'm building a thief deck. This last card may not be a thief, but he goes really well with our deck in terms of we got creatures that can't be blocked. So this is amazing. It's Toski, Bearer of Secrets. It's 3 and a green for a 1/1 legendary creature squirrel. It says this spell can't be countered. It's got indestructible. It says it attacks each combat if able, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So just like I said, we have a lot of cards that say it's unblockable, including the ones we added. There are more just in the deck itself. We're gonna be drawing a lot of cards if Tosk's in the field.
Yeah. Yeah, Toski is a really good card, especially in this deck. I mean, you basically want to get in for combat damage as much as possible, and I mean, getting card draw out of it, it's not a bad thing.
Never a bad thing.
All right, looks like that's all the creatures. What else did we add in here?
Yeah, we added 1 Planeswalker. This is Tasha, the Witch Queen. It's 3, a blue and a black for a legendary Planeswalker with a starting loyalty of 4. A stat ability that says whenever you cast a spell you don't own, create a 3/3 black demon creature token, which guess what? It's what our deck's themed around, is playing other people's spells. So it's pretty good. We're going to have some demons. It's got a +1 that says draw a card. For each opponent, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard and put a page counter on it. And a -3 that says you may cast a spell from among cards in exile with page counters on them without paying its mana cost. Getting more spells. Steven, Spellslinger. Let me put some pages on them.
Yeah, just leave me alone, man. Hunter, I gotta say, I do love the addition of Tasha the Witch Queen here. Normally, I this card was always kind of like a little funny to me, just because like it does take a second for it to get turned on. But I mean, just with the fact that your commander's doing the thing, making those 3/3 black demon creatures without really even having to do too much is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got creatures, we got planeswalkers. What about some, instants and sorceries? Talk to me about those.
Yeah, so we'll start with the sorceries first. This first one is a Mnemonic Betrayal. 1, a blue and a black for a sorcery that says exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. You may cast those cards this turn, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast those spells. It also says at the beginning of the next end step, if any of those cards remain exiled, just put them back in their owner's graveyards and exile Mnemonic Betrayal. So if we saw that our opponents have some really cool things and we got the extra mana, pop this down and start casting them all.
Yeah, a lot of text on this card for it to say, I hate you.
Oh, how rude. This next one is a board wipe. That's, if you're running black, you should run this card. It's Toxic Deluge. 2 and a black for sorcery. It says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X till end of turn. If you don't know it, you should know it. Gets around indestructible. Gets around a lot of things. Hexproof, you name it. Everything gets -X. However much life you pay, it's probably wiping the board.
Yeah, this is a great card. Life is a resource in Magic, and this card utilizes your life very well.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of like a way to get a board wipe, Praetor's Grasp is also going in here. It's 1 and 2 black for a sorcery that says search target opponent's library for a card and exile it face down. Then that player shuffles his or her library. You may look at and play that card for as long as it remains exiled. So if there is trouble and someone's like, I wish I drew a board wipe, be like, I can draw it for you and play it. You're welcome. Kind of like a help. But also, you can go ahead and just take someone's thing. If they're running a combo that you know about, go ahead and steal their combo piece.
Yeah, Praetor's Grass, really good, especially if, hey, maybe you just want to take that person's soul ring. Just be that guy.
Be that guy. Hey, you haven't played a Soul Ring yet. I don't mind if I go get one. Yeah, it's a really good card. Like I said, we're being a thief here. Give me your stuff. The next group of cards is my instants. Speaking of being a thief, our first card is Outrageous Robbery. X and 2 black for an instant that says target opponent exiles the top X cards of the library face down. You may look at and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast it. So, once again, we're robbing people. Give me your stuff.
This is just outrageous.
Isn't it just? Another card is just a really good card that they reprinted in the last set as well is Assassin's Trophy. It's a black and a green for an instant. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, and shuffle. Really wanted this card in here because of the flexibility of its any permanent. So you can go ahead and blow up their best thing on the board, including like a Planeswalker, or you can even just attack a land even though you're getting a basic land.
Yeah, I mean, Assassin's Trophy is really good. I've definitely been very upset when this card gets played. I think my favorite part about it is it's super cheap and it's at instant speed.
Yes, sir.
Not to mention, I think this is probably the best art I've seen for Assassin's Trophy.
It's really cool.
All right. Well, I see we added a couple enchantments.
Yes, we did. This first one, Court of Lochthwain. It's 2 and 2 black for an enchantment. It says when it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of target opponent's library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. If you're the monarch until end of turn, you may cast a spell from among cards exiled with Court of Lochthwain without paying its mana cost. So, if you can afford to spend the mana if you weren't the monarch, then it remains exiled. If you become the monarch later, then you can cast all the things that were exiled with it. It's pretty good.
Not a lot of downside here.
Not at all. The other enchantment I'm adding is a rogue class. It is a blue and a black for an enchantment class. Its first part says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library face down. You may look at it for as long as it remains exiled. Pay 1 a blue and a black to get to level 2. It says creatures you control have menace. And then level 3, which is the last level, is 2 a blue and a black. It says you may play cards exiled with rogue class, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So, once again, we're stealing stuff. Rogue class goes in the deck.
Yeah, 2 really good cards here, and I'm not gonna lie to you, especially Rogue Class. I mean, coming down so cheap. It is such a good card.
Oh, yeah. It just is going to grow and continue to be really good for us, especially giving our creatures menace. So if we didn't have any of our unblockable creatures, we can get in for that combat damage and start triggering our commander as well.
All right. Well, I love the additions. I do see some lands. Talk to me about your lands.
If you've been watching our channel long enough and you've been watching my upgrade videos, you've noticed a pattern. And I love the bond lands, and they are, quote, the commander lands, and they should be in every precon ever. And until they are, I'm going to continue to add them. So we're throwing in all 3 of the bond lands in our colors, Morphic Pool, Rejuvenating Springs, and Undergrowth Stadium. They enter the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. Like I said, we are playing commander, so hopefully you do, unless it's late game. but at that point, you're probably going to win the game. Morphic pool taps for a blue or black. Rejuvenating Springs, green or blue. Undergrowth Stadium is a black or green.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could have thrown more bond lands into my deck, but obviously I only needed one. But I do love, just like you said, if you've been watching our if you've been watching our channel at all, you know we're huge fans of these cards. But looks like those were all the additions, right?
That is all of my additions for this $100 upgrade.
All right. Well, we added some great cards. Unfortunately, when we add cards, we do have to remove cards. Hunter, why don't you talk to me about some of the creatures you removed?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to cut more creatures than I added. Trust me, it's okay. We're stealing stuff. We got spells to do that as well. So these creatures, this first part, Kazur, Ruthless Stalker is getting out of the deck. It's 3 and a green for a 3/3 legendary creature human warrior. It says partner with Ukima Stalking Shadow. And it says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. That doesn't say anything about stealing. That doesn't have unblockable. This card is a very weird include with our face commander at the helm. So he is getting out of the deck. I'm also getting rid of its partner, was also in the deck. It's Ukima Stalking Shadow. 1 a blue and a black for a 2/2 legendary creature, Whale Wolf. It says partner with a Kazur, Ruthless Stalker. It says it can't be blocked. And it also says when it leaves the battlefield, it deals X damage to target player. You gain X life, where X is its power. Yeah, there we go. We got an unblockable creature, but we added more. And this is pretty negligent if we're not boosting its power enough, which honestly, Kazur was the only one doing it. So, Ukima, you're leaving the battlefield.
Forever.
Forever. Ghostly Pilferer is also getting out. It's 1 and a blue for a 2/1 creature spirit rogue. It says when it becomes untapped, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. And it says whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. And it also says discard a card. Ghostly Pilferer can't be blocked this turn. Once again, it does a card draw thing if you pay for it. It's hoping that your opponents cast things from anywhere other than hand. I get it that their command zone counts as that, which is just 1 card. And you can discard a card for it to be unblocked. But we threw in unblockable creatures that are better, that just draw without having to pay. So this is gone. Whirler Rogue, 2 and 2 blue for a 2/2 creature human rogue artificer, says when it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 colorless stopped or artifact creature tokens with flying, and you can tap 2 untapped artifacts you control. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. It's a weird include here. I get it. We're trying to do the unblockable thing, but you're doing it in a way that I don't want to, which is if we didn't have those stoppers, you're going to have to tap 2 other artifacts, which most of the artifacts in this deck kind of are mana rocks, so I don't want to do that. So this is leaving.
Yeah, it's a lot of work around when you can just cast an unblockable creature.
You're absolutely correct. Void Attendant is 2 and a green for a 2/3 creature Eldrazi processor. It's got an ability that says it's got Devoid, and it has an ability for 1 and a green. Put a card an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard. Put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature token onto the battlefield. It has sacrifice this creature to add 1 mana to your mana pool. No. Why do I want this card? Why would I say, hey, you know that card that's been exiled? You can put it back in your graveyard for your chance to get it back. But I get a 1/1 that can tap for mana. No, that's not right. It doesn't even tap. You sacrifice it for mana. It's not that good.
No, this is a pretty rough include in this deck.
It's a weird one. I'm also getting rid of Blade Gryph Prototype. It's 5 generic mana for a 3/2 artifact creature Griffin. It's got flying and says when it deals combat damage to a player, destroy target non-land permanent of that player's choice that one of your opponents controls. So, a little bit of politics here. You'll be like, hey man, I'm going to swing at you. Can you blow up opponent B's thing? All up to your opponent. And I don't really like giving my opponent the option on what to blow up because there's a chance that they could be on a team at the time and they kind of collude against me. So I just didn't like the fact that my opponent had the option to blow up.
Yeah, I like politics in Magic because I think it makes the game way more interesting. But I also, this one's kind of weird, so I definitely see why you got rid of it.
Yep.
All right, Hunter. Well, you kind of said it a little bit. We got rid of a lot of creatures, but it looks like we have some more.
Yeah, so for whatever reason in this deck, high mana value was the name of the game, and we are just chopping it all down. So these next couple of creatures that we're getting rid of are super expensive. First one, Oblivion Sour. It's 6 generic mana for a 5/8 Eldrazi. Says whenever you cast it, target opponent exiles the top 4 cards of his or her library. Then you may put any number of land cards that player owns from exile onto the battlefield under your control. There's a chance that they don't have any lands that are exiled at the time this comes down, and if it does come down and you exile the top 4 cards and there's no land, you just spent 6 mana for a 5/8.
Yeah, the whiff potential here is quite strong.
The floor is you have a vanilla 5/8. Sage of the Beyond is also leaving. It's 5 and 2 blue for a 5/5 creature spirit giant. It's got flying. It says spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 less to cast. It has a foretell of 4 and a blue. This, I get it. It's making things cost less if I exile them, and it says I can play them from exile or whatever. But for 7 mana, it is too much. So no thank you.
I'll just pay the foretell cost.
Yeah, and then I get to still spend 7 mana overall. Diluvian Primordial, 5 and 2 blue for a 5/5 creature avatar with flying. Says when it enters the battlefield for each opponent, you may cast up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. Once again, this is a card that just will sit in your hand until you're like, ooh, they finally put an instant or sorcery that's really good. I am not holding on to a 7 mana card for that reason.
Yeah, I actually really like the primordials, but this one in this deck, not a huge fan.
Yep. And I know we are a thief. So this next one is Thieving Amalgam. It's 5 and 2 black for a 6/7 creature ape snake. It says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you manifest the top card of that player's library. And whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Honestly, manifesting cards is cool, but our commander says that we have to cast things, and manifesting isn't casting it, you're just flipping it over. So our commander actually doesn't reduce the cost of manifest at all, which I thought was pretty interesting. And we're really trying not to kill our opponent's creatures that we own. I know that probably our opponents are. So I don't know. The payoff there, losing 2 and gaining 2, it's very minimal. And I didn't think I needed it.
Hunter, I do like this card. I do think that it has a special place in certain decks. This card in this deck at 7 mana, especially with the cards you've already added, I definitely see why we got rid of it.
Yeah, the name of the game is casting our opponent's things, right? So I want to use that mana to cast our opponent's things. And all of these are 6 and 3 of them are 7 mana. It's a lot of mana.
All right, Hunter. Well, it looks like we're finally done with the creature removal. Let's move on to some fun sorceries. Looks like we did remove a couple.
Yeah, so I added a board wipe of Toxic Deluge. I'm getting rid of a pseudo board wipe of Curse of the Swine. X2 blue for sorcery, exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller puts a 2/2 green boar creature token onto the battlefield. However many mana you want to throw into this card, awesome. Go ahead and exile all your opponent's things. You're giving them 2/2s instead. Cool. I'd rather just wipe the board.
Curse of the Swine is a fun card, and it definitely has a special place in my heart, but being able just to destroy your opponent's creatures instead of giving them 2/2s is definitely better.
Mm-hmm. Feed the Swarm is a direct swap from Assassin's Trophy for throwing in. It's 1 and a black for a sorcery. It says destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's converted mana cost. Sorcery speed doesn't target everything. Assassin's Trophy is just better. And Villainous Wealth is getting out of the deck. You might be thinking, what? Why? Well, it's X, a black, a green, and a blue for a sorcery that says target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library. You may cast any number of spells with converted mana cost X or less from among them without paying their mana cost. You gotta put a lot of mana into this to make it work. Because if you're paying 5 mana, because you already had to pay the 3 that's already there, if you're paying 5, you're gonna flip over 2 cards, which means you have to have them convert of a mana cost of 2 or less. The whiff potential in this card is absolutely insane.
All right, well, that looks like all the sorceries. I don't see any instants, but I do see an enchantment removal. What do we got going on here?
I did mention we are chopping the top of this deck down. So this next enchantment is Mind's Dilation. It cost 5 and 2 blue. That's right, another 7 mana spell. For an enchantment that says whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, that player exiles top card appears to the library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So for 7 mana, we get a potential to cast something. If it is a land, we can't even play that land. So this card has been going up in price only because it's ever been printed once. So seeing it in a commander product is nice for the reprint valuation. But in my opinion, it's not doing enough for me to be 7 mana.
All right, well, you added some lands. I'm sure you removed some.
Oh, we did. That we did. I'm getting rid of the temples. Once again, like I said, with the bond lands we're throwing in, if you've ever watched my videos, I'm always removing the same cards because Wizards, please stop doing this. Temple of Deceit, Temple of Milady, Temple of Mystery. They are the temples that come in tapped. When they do, you can scry one, and they tap their respective colors. So Deceit is a blue and black, Milady is a black and green, and Mystery is a green or blue. Yep, they come in tapped always. I don't care about the scry thing. And the other one that always comes in tapped that I'm always getting rid of is a Dimir Aqueduct. It says it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it does, you gotta return a land you control to its owner's hand. And you can tap it to add a blue and a black. No thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the bounce land removal. I don't know, I'm pretty fond of the bounce lands. There's some fun to be had, but not here.
No thank you. I like the bounce lands when you're doing like a reanimator deck, especially early game. You can bounce something to pitch something from your hand just because you have too many cards in your hand. It's a great strategy, but not here.
All right, Hunter. Well, I think that's it. Are those all your removals?
That's all my removals. That's my whole upgrade.
All right, man. I love the upgrade. I'm terrified. You're going to be stealing so much stuff.
That's the name of the game. Grand Larceny.
Well, speaking of the Grand Larceny deck you just upgraded, you were given $100 for this Precon upgrade. What are you at with your budget, sir?
Yeah, so most of these cards are pretty cheap, except for kind of Tiny Bones. Tiny Bones pre-order price right now is almost $30, I think. That's wild. I expect that to come way down. But the total of all the additions at the time of recording with that kind of fluctuating pre-order price is $101.92. I expect that to go down.
All right, man. Well, I'll tell you what. Shane and I, I'm pretty sure, went under on our budget, so we'll give you the extra change.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, a little over budget. Shane and I helped you out, but what are your final thoughts on Gonti?
Yeah, my final thoughts are this is a really awesome deck. It's really cool. I mean, the original Gonti, obviously, this is a nod to him because the original Gonti, you stole one thing and you can be able to cast it. This just does more, and it has 2 other colors to play around with that. We've seen a bunch of ways to steal stuff in the past. Stealing is fun. Gonti is a great helm to do that.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you go down below, like and subscribe. Down below, you will see our Moxfield link for this deck list. Definitely check it out. And while you're on Moxfield, make sure you go ahead and give that bad boy a thumbs up too. Let us know in the comments what cards you think Hunter should have added. Let us know what cards you liked that Hunter added. We always love reading the comments. It definitely helps us out on future upgrades too, because we get to see some cool cards you guys bring up that we may not have ever heard before. Make sure you like us on all of our socials. It is @GuysThatMagic for everything. That is Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Also, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we do have a Patreon. If you guys do want to love us a little bit more, feel free to go check out that link in the description. If not, we appreciate everything you guys do for us here. But until the next video, have a good rest of your day.
Peace.